Hey, everybody. I have an incredible friend of mine here today. You know, this person is so great. It's really hard for me to summarize how incredibly good this person is. And he is super humble and he's not going to say it. So I'm going to just put it out there. But my friend Bob Batley, by the way, you guys, quick commercial break. I mispronounced his name for 2 years. This is how good he is. And he didn't correct me until recently. So, Mr. Bob Batley, please introduce yourself to the audience.
Well, thanks very much, Francesca. It's great being here. And I can't wait to have the recording to show my mother if you're going to say these nice things about me. This will be great. So my name is Bob Batley, and I am with COFCO Commercial Furniture.
See, I know it's going to be pulling strength, and you're an incredible leader. You know, when Bob and I were teeing up what we wanted to cover in this episode, I thought of Bob's experience. You know, he served in the restaurant industry. He's an incredible service person with COFCO. But Bob, you have an incredible leadership talent that I would love to unpack, kind of like we did recently in a conversation that we had. And you said something about trust and that how that rides so true in all the teams that you hire, all the teams that you inspire and grow, and everybody loves working with you. So give us some tips as we need this important part of workplace culture and how you've been able to give us some tips and how you've been able to maintain this greatness in this hybrid workplace.
Well, thanks. So I have really, and we'll talk about my career here in a second, but I've really sort of been passionate through my career just around teams and around synergy. So I started my life in the restaurant world where I opened and managed and ran a bunch of restaurants. And that was really where I first fell in love with sort of the concept of teams. I mean, I am sure there are other more important teams in the world, but there are a few that have to work well together all the time, day in and day out, than, a team at a restaurant that's got to put on a meal. If you think your server is good, you got to make sure the glasses are clean and the dinners are cooked well. I mean, there's just so many people that touch your experience when you go out, that you're only seeing the tip of the iceberg. And so it really became clear when I was doing that it didn't matter your age or your skill or your education or your socioeconomic place. If you knew how to be a good team member, you could really succeed. And that team sort of went into a synergy, which is, the sum is greater than all the parts. Right. So I really got hooked around what does synergy mean and how can you really draw that out of a team, and how do you hire for that? How do you keep those people? How do you, foster that? And how do you grow it? So from restaurants, I went into commercial construction. I had helped build some restaurants. And so it was a transition that sounds odd, but was working for me. For a decade, I was in commercial construction. And again, teams become a huge piece of how do you construct a building and how do you put it together and how do you do that with people you work with once or twice in the world, because sometimes you're working with some architects and you move to the next building and you never see those people again and it's a new team.
Right.
So in the construction world, it was fascinating to watch that too, and how do you hire the right people to, sort of do those pieces. And then recently, for the last 3 or 4 years, I'm with COFCO, and I literally went there, Francesca, because of the people that were there. I knew they were centered. I knew that it almost didn't matter what they did. It mattered how they did it. And I was just so impressed. I'd known them for years. And I was like, I have got to get onto their team and figure out how I can help them and do their thing. So I've spent years doing that, and I've spent years sort of thinking about and making every mistake there is as a leader. So if you're a new leader listening to Francesca, stay with her. You're going to get lots of great tips. But you are, but give yourself permission and forgive yourself now. You're going to screw it up, more than you get it right some days. And certainly I have scars to prove that. And I was telling one of my teammates that works for me today that I was going to be talking to you. And he just laughs and goes, "I can't wait to hear this." So you'll have at least one listener, and we'll see how true I am. But So anyway.
Yeah, no, I think that's all great. So you mentioned something, you get to hire people. So, and it's really hard when you initially hire someone. How do we test trust? And what are the qualities, Bob, that like stick out or that you look for that could help build a synergistic team for you and everybody else for that
Yeah.
matter?
Yeah. And so for me, yeah. So if you're looking for a synergy, a team that really can do more than, the sum of their parts, it is about trust, right? So you have to find people that will trust each other. And part of that is a trust where, Francesca, you're better at me in certain things. And so I need to let that go, right? I'm not going to be even if I'm the leader, I'm not going to be the smartest person in the room. As you've heard before, if you're the smartest person in the room, get a new room, right? Like it's, and so you have to really trust that others are going to do their job and do it well, and you're going to reward that and you're going to foster that. But you're right, as you're interviewing for that, I have tried, and again, I have lots and lots of experience at this. And, again, messed it up as many times as I made it. But I think there's a couple things you look for it. And, I'll go back to my mom's saying when I was little, where she said, 2 ears, 1 mouth. Now, she probably said that because we had a lot of boys in the house and there was a lot of noise happening. But it almost doesn't matter the questions you ask. It matters what you're listening for. So, so I tend to ask a lot of questions like, tell me about your biggest accomplishment. Tell me what it's like to be in a team that your favorite team you've played with. Tell me when something's gone bad. And you will hear immediately how they view what they are and what they're doing. So you will hear, like, if it's a successful story, it'll be the me show. And you're like, oh gosh, this is probably a bad fit, right? There's probably great places they could go and be great. Probably not. If you hear them go, I was doing this with this group of people, and you should have seen how we pulled in Francesca and this person, and we went together and we delivered something. So you're listening for those kinds of things. Same thing. The question that seems to always work to pull it out is, tell me sometime when you failed at something and had that go. And if they immediately start blaming other people, you're like, okay, well, that's fine. And that works in some industries, probably not going to work in my team. And it's not that other people don't make mistakes, but how do you own it, and how do you take responsibility? And if you are a true team, how do you have each other's back, and how do you handle those things?
I love that. Those are great tips. And you're absolutely right, because that will come out. And it is the trust factor, and it's trusting in others and then trusting in yourself, right? Because you brought out something good. You need to know what you're good at,
right,
and need to know what you're not so good at, right?
Yeah.
So
it's so true. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, it's so true. And a couple of people that have been on my teams before, between Derek Sahagian and Laura McLean. I think they've been on your show. And certainly the ones now. I am really good at sort of seeing big picture, seeing relationships, and sort of playing chess 2 or 3 moves ahead. That is what I'm really good at. I am awful at details. I am terrible at details. And anyone who's ever worked for me will say that to me. Like, oh yeah, I'm covering for Bob because he's got, he put down something wrong, or he spelled something wrong, or there's something wrong in a proposal or something like that. And so I almost always hire detail-oriented people because I know it's my weakness, it's my kryptonite, and I can be big picture all day long. And if we don't have the backups, superstars to make that happen. So in today's world, I work for COFCO. We do what's called demountable partitions. We have designers that do that, and she's very exact, and she is awesome. She does that. I also have a project manager who has to make it happen in the field, and he's thinking about every little detail going on. While I'm thinking about the relationship and how do we message that? How do we know? How do we not make a mistake before it happens? And how do we do those things? And so we all sort of fill each other's gaps. And that's, and once you save each other once in a while, all of a sudden that is where the synergy comes.
I love that. I love, right. So as we grow into our teams, we need to know who we are and, and complement each other, right? And owning exactly how you just said it, Bob. I'm not good at detail. You own that. So yeah, of course, what a great question in an interview or just in any place. If you see somebody pointing the finger and not, owning, like, yeah, you know what? I totally messed up. And you've said it a couple of times. I've messed up a lot in my career. And I've said, our lives are too short to learn all the mistakes. So let's learn from each other. Let's learn from ourselves. And then, we build a great, a tremendous team. So that's just great advice. Another thing that you brought up and that I'm quoting as part of the promotion, I love this Teddy Roosevelt quote. I don't care what you know until I know that you care. right? Tell me a
Right.
little bit of how that resonates with you.
So yeah, so I'm a big Teddy Roosevelt fan for oddball reasons. But he always had these great quotes and said certain things that I've stuck with me. And that's always meant something to me. There is so much you can teach, and there's so much you can learn on Google, and there's so many experts and consultants out there. You don't have to know everything. What you have to be able to do is care about something deeply and passionately. And so again, if you're looking for a career, some days you get to make that choice, and sometime in your career, you'll get to make those choices. And I would tell you to run towards your passion, because that's what you're going to care about. And as soon as you do that, the rest will follow. I ran restaurants for 22 years, and I worked nights and weekends, and I was working 80, 90 hours a week. And I loved every second of it. It was awesome. And the moment that I stopped.
Yeah, we just froze up for a second. Mm-hmm. There you go.
Uh-oh, did I
Just
freeze?
clip that out. Yep, I'll clip that out.
Okay, sounds good.
So, yep, you've been in the restaurant business, and that is some hard work. But you're right. When you're doing something that you truly love and you're passionate about, you don't feel the time or the pain. Just as working on this podcast for me, right? I was describing the different elements that I look to build each episode. And a good friend of mine said, that sounds like a job. It sounds like so much work. And I'm like, it doesn't feel it. It just doesn't. So that's exactly what we're saying here in, guiding and leading others. And as I mentioned in the beginning of this interview, folks, Bob is very humble, and we've met through a networking group, and we have such a special group there because we literally have built a program to support young leaders. And it was Bob's brainchild, right? This is how generous and supportive you are. And I get to participate in it, and it's amazing. It's amazing. So it was just such an honor, just bringing all of these pieces together with your thought. And yes, you're thinking two paces ahead, and we're taking care of our young leaders. And it's pretty cool how generous you are.
Well, I get energy from that. That's where I get my energy from.
Yeah.
Right? Like you see some, you have really run that thing, and watching those 10 young leaders last year come through our program, it gives me great confidence in what's going to happen in the future. Where we have made a mess of things, I have great confidence that next generation is going to do some serious fixing. And I'm sure they'll bumble some things along the way too, but they will. Right. But it's an amazing group from, all kinds of talents and energy.
It speaks to your philanthropy and your care. So I'm going to flip the switch a little bit, and I'm going to put a different kind of question out there, because it goes along with the theme of who I am and what I do here. So in your work and what you do, Bob, do you have a favorite item of clothing or an accessory, and how does it make you feel? Like when you put this item on, what is it and how does it make you feel?
So first answer, top of my head, and I think this is the right answer. I should pull them off my feet and show you. I have a pair of loafers that I've had probably for 20 years. Let me. So here they are. It's going to be really hard to tell, but you can tell they are totally destroyed. They are very, very nice Italian loafers.
Are they Gucci?
They are, no, it's a Cole Haan. It's an Italian loafer. And they just fit my feet right. I feel like a superstar in them. And the funny part is they don't look that good anymore. I have taken them to different shoe people, and they have said, supposedly I have put on the last sole and the last heel on them that I ever am allowed to. But when I wear them, I feel like I just have some confidence in me that I am sort of out there and making sure I'm, sort of walking the walk is sort of what I do with them. So I would say my loafers is sort of my superpower.
I love that, right? Our shoes can have the power to transport us to all of these great places that we've taken them, right? Yeah. So that is super, super cool. So if we were to pull out one piece of advice for our young leaders, what would you suggest, my friend? Other than what we've just said, what else could we impart before we conclude here today?
Yeah. I think one thing I would say that I haven't said, so let's do it that way, that sort of wraps it up, is there's a scarcity mentality versus an abundance mentality, right? People either believe there's a set pie and I'm going to get as much of that pie as I can, or there's lots of pies and, you know, you get to eat lots of it. I just think, you know, if I could, you know, no young people want to hear about all my mistakes and my experience, but I would tell you this life is about abundancy, and there is lots out there and there are lots of choices. And if you ever find yourself in that sort of rat trap of here's the pie and I must get the biggest piece, redefine the pie, because I am telling you there is more out there. And if you ever need that help or you want to talk about it, you know, Francesca's a great one, but I'm certainly open to, and we'd love to, you know, talk yourself out of that box, because I think that's a box that really limits your ability and your thinking, and it certainly crushes synergy. So
that is so perfect. Wow. That has got to be one of the top 3 takeaways of all the 3 takeaways that I impart on each episode, because I hear that and it says to me, there's enough out there for everybody, right? You know how sometimes people fight and they're too competitive, or that's my client or whatever, right? What I just heard you say in the most eloquent way is redefine the pie. And the scarcity and the abundance, that's exactly what I've been studying, as far as sometimes we grow up and there's a sense of lack, but there's so much to offer. Wow, my friend. Wow. I'm clapping my hands because that was stupendous. So because you're so awesome, let's make available to the people, if someone wanted to get in touch with you, Bob, and talk with you further, personally or professionally, what's the best place for them to find you?
Yeah, I think the best place is LinkedIn. I'm there all the time, and I'm sort of monitoring it. And I certainly put stuff out around my industry and teams and those kinds of things. So either follow me. I'm happy to follow anyone. And again, do not hesitate to reach out. If you're a friend of Francesca's, you're a friend of mine, and so, you know, I can always make time. So we'll talk about anything you want to talk about.
Thank you so much, Bob. This was such a pleasure. I cannot really wait to release it so you can tell everybody in the office to listen up, because you have such great advice.
We'll wait for your comment. We'll see how it goes. So.
Thank you, my friend. Have an awesome afternoon.
Good to see you.
Great to see you.